So if you're in year 11, you've got 5 months until your GCSE English exams. And it's really important, both for language and literature, that you start to think about some of the techniques that you are going to master, that you are going to learn. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't learn all the other techniques, but quite often many students ask, what are some of the high-end techniques that I need to know? And I'm going to share with you five grade 9 techniques that if you can identify them, that you can analyze and impress your examiner. Now, I must add this stipulation. It has to be relevant. So you can't make it up. If it's not present, then don't say that it's there. Okay? That's the thing. The other thing is you need to think of it like this. When you're analyzing a text, you need to think about, well, actually, what's the difference between my analysis now in comparison to when I was in year 7? Okay? They want to see growth. They want to see that you have mastered those English skills. Okay, so this is why I'm going to share with these five high-end techniques. Now, I also want to add another thing here too. You can use these to analyze text, of course, but it's also important to know that you can use it in your own writing too for creative writing and transactional writing. But for today's video, I'm just going to share with you the five high-end techniques that if are present and you can identify them, then you're going to stand out to your examiners. And this is relevant to any exam board, AQA, EDUCAS, WJC, OCR, Edexcel, IGC Edexcel, IGCC Cambridge, CCEA, Nat 5, any exam board. So one, and by the way, there's no order for these. It's not that one is better than the other. They're just all high end. So the first one, semantic fields. So a semantic field is when a writer deliberately uses words that relate to a particular group, category, a particular field as such, okay? And they're really powerful because it can help to express and convey an idea powerfully. It can help to link to the theme, okay? So, for example, for those of you who are studying Shakespeare's Macbeth, you might remember Lady Macbeth's powerful scene, her monologue when she receives the letter from her husband, where she says, "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here." Now, if you look through her speech, there is a definite semantic field of supernatural. We have words such as dies cruelty, which evokes, evil. We have mortal thoughts. So you've got her distinguishing between, humans, people, and beyond. And then the more explicit spirits. Okay, so that's really important because if you understand that and you can recognize that language pattern, then that lends weight to interpretation of her evoking or conjuring up, witchcraft. So it lends weight to an interpretation of Lady Macbeth being witch-like. Okay, and again, remember, I'm not going to go too much in here, but as well as that, you could also argue that it's the only tool she has being a female in the Jacobean period. Okay, so you can look at it from both angles. So that's semantic field. The second powerful technique that, if you can identify, is going to help you to stand in good stead to get in a grade 9 is a motif. Now, a motif is a repeated word, phrase, image, and it relates to a theme, a general theme, okay, in the text. So an example again from Shakespeare's Macbeth, for those of you who are studying it, one motif is blood. Blood is repeated. This image of blood is repeated throughout play. At the start of the play, after the witches, and we have the captain telling King Duncan how Macbeth has, been a war hero, and they evoke a lot of blood imagery. And initially, that's seen as heroic because of how hyperbolic it is. It also hints that he is bloodthirsty. And you see blood repeated throughout Banquo's ghost, leading like the out damn spot. So what that needs you need to think about then with these motifs is what is it trying to show us? So Shakespeare's trying to use this motif, arguably, to persuade his Jacobean audience that this physical violence, this warlike heroism that perhaps was revered, is actually something that we should be critical of because it can easily tumble into tyranny. It can easily move into overambition. And with the case of Lady Macbeth, particularly, you can see that blood imagery relates to guilt, that theme of guilt. Okay. So again, that's really powerful to know. And I would encourage you all to go through your set literary text and see if you can identify any semantic fields or motifs. Okay. And again, if you can get really good at recognize them, then you can also use them in your own writing as well. Okay. So that's what I would recommend. Now then, the third top tip is to be specific with your analysis. Make sure that you zoom in on quotations. Now, there's nothing wrong with identifying, and this is where grammar comes into play actually. There's nothing wrong with identifying word class, and you should do that. So, for example, grammar, when I talk about word class, I mean things like adjectives, adverbs, nouns, which is great. But you want to try and be more specific than that. As I said at the start, you need to think about what's going to make you stand out, what's going to be the difference between, your year seven analysis and now. So you want to learn more specific terms. So rather than just analyzing a verb, what type of verb is it? Is it a dynamic verb? Is it a stative verb? Okay. So for example, if a character uses a lot of stative verbs, are they, stuck in their inner turmoil? Are they stuck in their thoughts? Okay. Dynamic verbs are action verbs. They have a start and an end. Okay. Does that create a sense of energy? Okay. So you need to think about what specific word class is being used and why it's being used. Okay, that's really important. The fourth technique that I'd like to talk about are metaphors. Now, metaphors, I'm sure you're all aware, a metaphor compares two things by saying one thing is something else, which is great. But a lot of students fall down because they're not really sure how to go beyond, analyzing it, explaining it. And quite often or not, students are confused as to really, well, why not just use a simile? Because a simile also compares the two things using as or like. But with a metaphor, it kind of closes that gap of comparison. So what's really useful is if you really learn what a metaphor is, and that will help you to understand why it's being used. So I want you to think about metaphors in three parts. So a metaphor has the tenor, which is the main idea. Okay, that's what's being explored. Then you have the vehicle, and I like to think of that as the driving force of the metaphor. Okay, so you've got the tenor and the vehicle. And then you've got what's called the ground, and that's what are similarities, what's the common ground between the tenor and the vehicle. So let me give you an example. If you had the metaphor, love is a fruit, love is the tenor, that's the main idea being explored. The vehicle is fruit, that's what it's being compared to. So you need to think about what's the common ground between them. So if we look at this quotation, love is a fruit. Well, again, you want to mentally think about, well, what are the connotations to love? Well, love is generally speaking, a positive feeling, isn't it? It's excitement, passion, sweetness. It makes you feel good, right? What about fruit? Well, fruit is sweet, isn't it? If you think about the common ground is sweet, it's healthy, it makes you feel good. But equally, love can also go bad. It can end, it can go sour. Fruit can rot, it can go bad, it can go off. So by knowing that and understanding those terms, it can help you to analyze it in more depth and look at different interpretations. And there are different types of metaphors. Another one is like an extended metaphor. An extended metaphor is one that continues throughout a passage, okay? I mean, it's expanded on. And that's really powerful to know because, again, it encourages you to think about, well, why has the writer, the playwright, the poet chosen to do that? It's a deliberate choice, okay? So make sure that you really fully understand metaphors. And then finally, the fifth point that I'd like to make there is it's really important to understand what's called the five grammar moods in English. So the five grammar moods in English are indicative, imperative, integrative, conditional, and subjunctive. So an example of this would be, again, for those who are studying Shakespeare's Macbeth, you have his famous soliloquy, if it were done when 'tis done, twould well, it were done quickly. You know, that speech, Act 1, Scene 7. Now then, this is what we call a subjunctive mood. He's speaking hypothetically. Um, he's saying if this was done, it would be good if it was done, quickly. He wants to get it done as soon as possible. And by understanding this type of grammatic mood, understanding that it conveys something hypothetical or uncertainty, highlights that actually Macbeth is really grappling with this. It's not that here at this moment in the play that he is bloodthirsty, tyrant. He still has that moral fiber. He still is thinking, is this the right thing to do? And it highlights his fears, it highlights his uncertainty. Okay. And in doing this, it helps to think about, well, actually, Does he really want to do this? And it lends weight then to think about, well, is he being manipulated by the witches? Because then afterwards we have him seeing this dagger that he, has one of him, on him as well. So it makes us think, well, linking to this subjective mood adds weight to this idea. Well, could that be a real dagger that he's seeing? Is it witchcraft? Or is it just something he's conjuring up from his own mind because he actually wants to do it? He has that strong ambition within him. So by knowing the grammatical moods, it helps you to analyze and break down the quotations in more depth. And by knowing that as well, you can use it in your own writing powerfully. So those are the 5 high-end grade 9 techniques that I'd like you to try and master and learn. Remember, if you've got any questions, let me know. And let me know equally what are your top your takeaways from today's video. I look forward to hearing from you. Bye for now.